Awesome.
GM, welcome to another Touchcast podcast episode. Today we have Rahul with us. A little backstory on this episode. So we did a episode with Sumit from Vibes. You know, he was telling us about the venture studio model, how they've scaled it up, how it's come about, and a key conversation from that came about in a way where a dev shop is essentially a venture studio in the making. And I had shouted out Rahul in that conversation. Rahul and I have been going back and forth on Twitter about when we do this. It's finally happening, boys. Yeah, Rahul, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. We've been going back and forth on, doing a podcast for a while. I'm glad it's finally happening.
Finally, bro. Rahul, like I know that you were part of the Celestia team early on. I know about the dev shop. I know about what you're doing right now. Give us like a quick 30-second introduction about yourself, and then we can go really deep into the conversation.
Cool. Yeah. 30-second intro. I'm Rahul, founder of Arius. Well, now founder of Scalerize. Been in the space 4.5 years. Before that, I come from an academic background of working on distributed systems, specifically supercomputers at Cray. And then my formal work was mostly in Web3. I started off at Rent Protocol. Um, then was at a couple of other companies that included Celestia, and finally in 2023 is when I decided it was time that I started something of my own, and that's how Areas came to be.
And then talk to us about that. Like, hey, you were at Celestia. Celestia in 2023 was decently big. Like, I remember going to conferences, people were talking about it. Talk to us about leaving Celestia, leaving everything else, and then starting a dev shop. What was the thesis? How did you think about it? How did it come to be?
Right. So the idea was to always build something of your own. And when I left Celestia, I did not really have a direction, as in I did not have an idea on what I wanted to build. I just had the only aim or goal I had in mind was to build something of my own, which was it could be any arbitrary thing, like any low-hanging fruit, whether it be open source contribution. I just wanted to contribute and build a meaningful name and brand for myself.
That makes sense. And then talk to us around the thesis of the dev shop. I know you do a lot of ZK focused stuff. Where did that thesis come about? Is that something that you think differentiates you from like the other dev shops out there? Like, how did you find that niche? What was the story there?
Right. So I'll start off like why I started off a dev shop and just like not find like research on a couple of areas, find a product, and then try to raise money for it. Um, so as I said, when I left Celestia, just wanted to build something of my own. Did not really have a direction, and also I was like throughout my years working at different companies, I was just an engineer, so hadn't really made the connections yet, the right connections to the right people, whether it be VCs, any facilitators, like anyone who could help out, advisors, etc. So I did not really have those connections. So in order to be able to raise money, you require a lot of that, or well, at least portions of it. Everyone's mileage varies. So the easiest method for me was to start a dev shop where I could directly put my skills to use and have like a revenue stream which I could build up over time. And eventually, when I wanted to launch my own product, I could use that revenue to bootstrap it to MVP or even further.
And then how did the ZK component come about?
Right. So ZK component was a bit of a hit or miss. So that comes from my interoperability days. So one of the companies that I was working at where we were trying to solve interoperability through light clients, basically trying to bring IBC to Ethereum. Now Union and a lot of other like companies like Polymer and other solutions are doing the same. Even IBC v2 is like compatible with a lot of EVM chains through Succinct. Um, so we were doing that. The tech was very nascent, and when we tried figuring out, okay, you take light clients of a particular consensus, put in the smart contracts for another chain, and then you can just like run trust minimized light clients for each other. That really did not work because blockchains are inherently these highly constrained execution environments. So the next step we started looking for is, okay, we have a solution, we know how to make it work. It's just like it just doesn't fit there. So we started looking for alternatives, and then ZK was all the rage back then, and this was late 2021, early 2022. Um, and we started looking into, okay, can we use ZK to basically compress all of this computation into succinct proof and verify it, and be able to verify that entire lifetime on chain. And we ended up creating the first CIRCOM circuits for batch verification of 825519 signatures. That was a big win. And that's the whole reason I got into ZK, started exploring different protocols. ZK is a whole different ball game today than it was back then. Back then, we just like had like a couple of DSLs. Maybe you had like Socrates, and then you had CIRCOM, and the provers were comparatively slow. They were like highly unoptimized. And today we were looking at like we've got Plonky 3, we've got Binius, we've got Stu, some of the fastest provers in the world, and we've got come a like very long way since then. So yeah, ZK was like highly interesting to me. It fit exactly into uh, my like optimal minima of this much math I want to know and this much engineering is what I have to do. So yeah, ZK, and plus like the properties it gives, privacy, is something that I like really believe in as a fundamental right, whether it be to as like a sovereign citizen, or it be as like a fundamental right on chain as an on chain user. So yeah, privacy aspect of it, and then the compression aspect of it, like that you can compress arbitrary large computations to these like synth proofs. That was what attracted me to it, and yeah, that rabbit hole went deeper and deeper, and here we are today.
I think the
Yeah,
thesis,
totally.
and that was the main aspect. Like you double down on one thing. Is it more, like another aspect of this episode that I really want to focus on is, if there's someone out there that wants to build a dev shop, this episode should be like a one-on-one on how they should think about it. Is the advice for them then to be like, okay, focus on a niche? Like I doubled down on ZK back in the day, it's worked out. Look at what's new right now and build on a niche that you're comfortable with. Or would you say building a generalistic dev shop is probably more attractive?
So it actually depends on geography, and this might be a little bit of spicy take to say, but it really depends on geography. So if you're west of Asia, then I would recommend you can go for generalist approaches, because um, it's easier to build a general purpose dev shop, because sourcing talent, retaining talent is much easier. um, React devs come dime a dozen, right? Even then, like like Java devs come dime a dozen, or something similar. But then, if you're obviously you can if you're like that inclined to work on novel tech, do ZK as well. But I would say like East, or like Asia and East, um, I would recommend like double down on niches, because that's where you can really shine, right? Setting yourselves apart from all these other dev shops, A, brings credibility to you. Uh, B, builds a unique brand identity for yourself, because you can offer something that a handful of people in the world can. And at third, I would say would be that it helps makes connections faster, because like let's say if there is like an in increasing like a niche that is like becoming increasingly popular, and you're early onto it, then um, the applications that will be being built, there are there are always in initial markets, there are more ideas than there are developers for it. So now you can offer your services to a number of these ideas, whether they're funded, non-funded, however they're paying for it, and yeah, that becomes your revenue stream.
Yeah, totally. I think the niche that you have selected, I'm really bullish on it as well. Like, I think somewhere I read that crypto fails if privacy is not like one of the core primitives, and ZK is kind of powering that primitive. And I think we are getting closer, and everyone is realizing that composable privacy is like the next big thing where it'll kind of like get integrated into every layer of the stack, and people like the all the on-chain actions will be kind of powered by that. So super interesting what will happen in that space. But I want to take a step back, right? Like for someone on the Twitter, they don't know what a dev shop even is. They don't know how it operates. Even if an engineer is working at some protocol, if they want to contribute in this manner, they probably don't know where to start and how to kind of go about it. So why don't you kind of walk us through what a dev shop actually is? How do you guys operate that is different from a company or like any other kind of organization, like what actually is a dev shop and how you guys operate.
Right. So just in simple terms, a dev shop is this small company of people, and this can be like an individual entity, or it could be a collective of people, or some other model where we provide engineering or cryptography or um, any other related services across the stack to other companies like these, like seed, pre-seed, or even sometimes like Series A funded startups that want to hit the ground running, because they obviously they will hire their own teams of experts as well, but to fill that pipeline takes time. So often we can be the stopgap for them in the meantime, providing them the expertise so that their development doesn't slow down while their hiring pipeline is being built. So how do you go about starting this? Is very different from how you would go about doing a product-based company. So a product-based company, it's all about visibility, bringing on users, finding the right PMF, and then like figuring out revenue streams or figuring out how do you get
Yeah,
acquired. In a dev shop, initially no one knows you. So and because there is like a lot of competitors offering the same thing, you have to set yourselves aside. So initially, a lot, and we've seen this path being taken by a lot of dev shops across the world as well, is to contribute to open source projects. High agency individuals within your team will go and like make these great contributions, spend time. So you have to you have to pocket this cost. They'll spend time and make these contributions to open source projects. Will eventually start getting seen by different ecosystems, whether it be these product-based companies or it could be, you know, if we're talking Web3, it could be blockchain like foundations themselves, and then you can start contributing directly to them and figure out what like your different day-to-day business dealings look like.
got it. And one of the things that like I often see on Twitter, and I don't know why they get kind of criticized some of the projects. It's like one of the criticisms for like I don't want to name any one protocol, but it's like they have outsourced the product to a dev shop, or it's kind of looked down upon. Like why do you think that kind of sentiment exists where outsourcing is it like outsourcing in the early stages is good, but long term you should not outsource to a dev shop? Is that something like what's that kind of relationship between a protocol and a dev shop in the early
Right.
stages and as well as it grows over time? Like is that outsourcing a good thing?
Yeah. So outsourcing can be a great thing, because a lot of these companies can get great work done for relatively cheap, especially given that they're like, let's say you're a pre-seed funded startup, you're like you have a limited runway, and then you want to make sure that instead of taking doing hit and miss like these trial runs on different candidates and churning through them and burning your money, rather than that you figure out like, okay, this is like a well qualified group of people that can come in, work as a team, gel in with our existing team, and help us deliver like our initial product, let's say product, whatever it is. um, with your question on why is it frowned upon, that's mostly like a VC mentality. And there's like specific reason for it. When VCs fund a particular idea, often they're taking a bet on not the tech, but primarily on the founder themselves. So what they do is when these companies, these startups, they go in, they have this idea, or they might have like certain expertise, but they might not have everything across the stack. What they do is they go contact these dev agencies and they said, come help us out. And that's what these dev agencies do. Initially, it could be like taking ownership of a large portion of the stack, and over time that gets reduced to particular niches that they want the dev shop to take care of, or even like transition them out as they build their entire hiring pipeline and their team expertise grows. Um, the problem is that some startups try to hide this relationship. They say, "Oh, we're competent enough to their like." That's what they say to their VCs, but they have like a dev shop on the side. So because all of this is not public information, and then you have like this skewness of information flowing bi-directionally, what does is when the VCs find out, investors find out, or any stakeholders find out that you're getting your stuff done from DevShop, but claiming otherwise, that becomes an issue because then they start questioning your competency. Often, and we've seen this as well, some companies are very open about it. We're working with these companies. For example, like Maiden or ZK were like London Class. They were very open about, oh, we're working with these companies. These companies are contributing exactly this thing to our stack, and everyone was fine with it. And then there's been other instances where this relationship was, well, like people were deliberately trying to hide it, and when it was found out, it becomes a problem. However, it shouldn't be. The problem was, why was it being hid? So it's more of a secrecy thing.
Yeah. And KG, like there are actually really big protocols that, they either acquire a dev shop to focus just on their product, or they outsource like specific things to a dev shop. Like let's take Rahul's example, hiring a CK engineer. I don't know if you ever looked at LinkedIn, but like it's mad expensive. So if you want to build something in ZK and you just have a thesis and you want an MVP, probably easier to work with a dev shop, create an MVP, figure out how it goes, all of that, than to find a ZK engineer who is willing to jump ship from an already well-paying job. I think people shit on marketing agencies as well. The difference between like a marketing agency and a dev shop is basically that a dev shop is a specific skill set that's very scarce. A marketing agency, like they can own like a certain number of things. A dev shop can own a certain number of things, but the impact that they would have is a lot different than the marketing agency, which is why you see marketing crypto Twitter a lot more outraged about marketing agencies, and the dev shop hate never comes out. Like this is something that people talk about behind closed doors, and it's like private conversations, but no one will ever call out a dev agency uh, on crypto Twitter because they essentially go forward. The one thing that I have seen people call out is dev shops hunting for grants, and like this distinction between a dev shop and a grant hunter, and a grant hunter calling themselves a dev shop. Raul, what do you think about that dynamic? Like, are they essentially dev shops? Like people who go to RFPs, collect grants, and they're like a dev shop. What's like the difference between that model and your model?
Uh, so that's an interesting one. So what usually happens is there are some people who are like serial grant hunters. They hop from ecosystem to ecosystem, and their goal is to specifically just make money. And early 2020 to right about FTX blowing up, um, that cycle was insane with grants, right? I'm aware of like certain ecosystems where grants were given up to 750K, even $1 million, and this is like height of the bull market, and nothing was delivered for it, like nothing at all. And this was rinsed and repeated across ecosystems. Eventually, as the bear market came, a lot of foundations became wise about it, and there was a certain shift from just outright being, you get a grant, like that popular meme of throwing stuff away, and like everyone gets a grant. I think it's like Oprah. Yeah. So they became much wiser, and nowadays it's starting to get much more difficult to like basically grant farm ecosystems, and the requirements are becoming a bit more stringent as well. With respect to the difference between serial grant hunters and dev shops is uh, basically delivering, right? Often dev shops get into contact with foundations as well. They create personal relationships with these foundations, and then they're paid through these grant programs because that's how the foundation operates. Um, but often, like dev shops usually, and well, good dev shops will usually focus on a particular ecosystem that they think they can make a major impact on. A grant farmer, on the other hand, will go to wherever makes them the most money, and they will repeat. And but uh, there's a pros and cons. The con on the larger con on the grant farming side is you lose credibility very quickly because across ecosystems you do not deliver, and then unfortunately this is a very small space. People talk, and that has a negative impact on it. But yeah, I don't see a large difference. It's just like a collective of developers, collective of developers. It's just motivations and intentions that make the difference.
Yeah, and I would assume a dev shop has more stricter KPIs in terms of execution delivery. In terms of a grant farmer or someone who is building something for a grant, they may actually have to take up marketing for that protocol. They may actually have to run the protocol. They may actually have to do TGE for that protocol. They may actually have to run it anon, while
Mhm.
a dev shop can be more public about their collaboration, their association of that. Yeah, Raul, I mean, I would assume the biggest part of a dev shop is sort of your talent. ZK talent is already dime a dozen. That too, building it out of India. I know you guys have an office in India as well. How do you think about like finding talent for your dev shop? Like, I think this is probably advice for like every foundation out there as well, not just
Yeah,
dev shops. What's your key to success in terms of finding talent uh, and nurturing talent?
yeah. So when you want good talent, there's usually two approaches. The first one is um, you throw the most money out there, and then you have like you make the assumption that you have a decent vetting committee, and then you find very good people, and then they become your core team. Um, Unfortunately, like ZK engineers are expensive. They're very expensive, and especially like when the whole ZK roadmap was blowing up, they became really expensive. I'm talking 200K plus, like just for even entry level ZK engineers, or like 150K plus for entry level ZK engineers. So instead what we did was we decided to trade off capital for time. We would hire high agency individuals with like critical thinking, reasoning capabilities. So general purpose skills, people that can pick up stuff very quickly. These could be freshers, these could be college students, or these could be like people who are trying to break into Web3. We would bring them in. We would spend time training them for anywhere between 3 to 6 months, and then they become a fully fledged ZK engineer that you're still paying. Well, at least you're still paying like the all reasonable rates that you hired them for. Um, there is again upside and downsides to it. Upside is now you have this highly skilled, talented engineer that could match up to um, this 150 and 200K paid engineer out there. The downside is retention. You can't retain them because there's so much capital out there. They will get offers. They will want to get hired out. Even if you have like let's say like a contract in place for a year or so, post their training to cover training costs, so whatever it is. Um, as soon as that one year expires, um, after that doesn't work anymore.
I think that's
Um,
true for everything though. Like, the like Ishan from Scribe, he always says like the death spiral for an agency is always talent. and you have to be really creative with how you retain talent. Is that something you figured out, Raul? How to retain talent? Is it like equity share? Is it like incentives and other forms? Like, is there like a secret sauce to retaining
Yeah.
talent as well?
Equity share is the big one. You have to give them skin in the game. People who have skin in the game often want to stay for longer because they want to see their bets getting played out. The second one is like often an environment makes a large difference as well, especially given with teams that are completely in person. If you can create an environment where they feel accepted, where they feel welcomed, where um, they have fun working, um, that often makes a large difference as well. Um, but at the end of the day, there is no good way to retain good talent, right? People who have like believe in your vision will stay. Um, People who don't, even though they're like amazing engineers, 10x engineers, will leave regardless. So what you have to do is you need to have like a highly efficient hiring pipeline. You need to be able to replace people as quickly as they go. Um, and as long as you have that, so if then you're not um, relying on retention at all. If retention happens, amazing, that's great. Now you have two good engineers, right? But if retention doesn't happen, you have to make sure that by the time you have an expected probability of this person leaving, you you'll have this person trained and ready to step into their shoes. And this has to be continuous, constant. So you have to create these hybrid hiring pipelines at the very grassroots levels, into colleges, into universities, into different these dev clubs across tier one, tier two cities. And I've seen this same play being done not just in India. I've seen this being done in Vietnam as well. I've seen the same thing being done in Philippines as well. So especially on the this side, like on the Asian side, this play works just because talent is cheap and very good talent is cheap.
Yeah, on the same current topic, like you mentioned, like sourcing and being very close to the colleges and universities. What's like the current interest level towards breaking into crypto? We see it a lot on Twitter, and Rachit, they do a kind of a series on how to get into Web3 and break into Web3. But on the developer side, how is like the level of interest from Indians into, like, they are very talented in on the coding side and they're really good at that. But what's the level of interest in crypto at the moment?
There is very high level of interest, and there's two primary reasons for it. A, it's a highly talked about industry, and when that happens, students are basically sponges of information. They absorb all of that. The word that they hear the most, they get attracted towards it very easily. And the second one is it is comparatively one of the highest paying industries. So students are also attracted towards building their skill set into these industries. So by the time they get into their ultimate year, for my US counterparts, seniors, or they try like they're graduating, they have the required skill set that they can go and get these 200 300k paying jobs, or like let's say 150 200k paying jobs that would be equivalent to cracking um, like a fan company. And the problem is that cracking fan companies, the pool is massive. It's quite large. So the competition is like cutthroat. It's breakneck. You can't really do anything about it. And often, even if you have the required skills, just because the pool is so large, you just get um, spaced out by how many people there are. So yeah, that's one thing that's like one thing that really interests students into getting into crypto. Other than that, in India now on the academic side as well, there is high interest on getting onto the cryptography side of things, getting into the distributed systems aspect of blockchains, what properties do blockchains offer. ZK IT Bombay has a very dedicated cryptography for ZK, where like a course and program for um, for specifically people who have interest in these areas. Um, so yeah, as that is increasing, students take these courses as they're like just like, they hear fancy names, but when they actually see the content, they get very interested by it because this is like very cutting edge novel tech, and you get to work at the forefront of these exciting technologies, privacy, like compute compression, validity of arbitrary statements, etc.
No, that's awesome. And Rahul, I know we're at like the 30-minute mark. I want to dedicate the last 30 for the new stuff that you're building out. The last question I have on like the dev side is, I think for anyone looking to start a dev shop, it's always inspirational to hear like someone's story of how they got their first client. I'm sure there's a story here, like after Celestia, when you started this, how did you land your first client? Like, how did that feel? How did you go about it? What happened? Tell us that story.
Yeah, our first client was like a fairly small protocol that actually never went into production. The founders pivoted, but like they had a very cool thing that they were building. It's just that this sometimes like these products, although they're like technically cool, just do not have the required uses for them. So how we found them out was like we were just like contributing to these open source repositories related to zk cryptography, other stuff, and we were hanging out in a bunch of discords, and like myself, I was hanging out like in, if I'm not wrong, I can't remember which Discord it was, but yeah, I was hanging out with like some protocols Discord, and then some like a bunch of cryptography related questions started coming through, and the team did not have the bandwidth for it. So, just out of curiosity, I started answering those questions. A couple of days later, the founder reached out to me, said, "I saw you answering those questions. I've seen like that you guys do like you personally do some contributions to these open source repositories as well. I want to hire you. How can I go about it?" So I told them like, you can't hire me because I have my own business. However, you can contract me out, and you can contract my team out as well. And that's basically how we landed our first contract. And yeah, when you get that close that first deal, coming from a solely engineering background to even if this like was complete fluke, you suddenly feel like, oh shit, maybe I can do BD as well. Maybe I can figure it out. It's a skill that I can learn. It's definitely a hard skill to learn because it requires a certain like, different set of social skills. It requires a certain different set of rapport building skills, which often as engineers like we undermine, but we start to appreciate when we start doing it ourselves and see that how hard it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And how big was your team back then when you got your first contract?
We were three people. It was myself. It were and I like a fourth year student from actually stats student who was just interested in cryptography and had worked with him before, and Sunil, who was one of our first hires at one of my like early startups.
Cool. All right. Now that's, I think that's all on the dev side. Let's pivot into something a little bit more uh, newer. I would say more passionate for
Of
you.
course.
Uh, so KG, Rahul's basically, you know, he has someone running Arius Labs. That's going on. You know how he talked about building revenue and then building something of his own. He's finally launched Scalerize. You know, I've been in conversations with him. Uh, I wasn't. I had given him another name suggestion, but he went with Scalerize, and that was like a whole conversation one day as well. I love to feel like I'm part of his journey as well. Like Rahul, tell us about the moment where it was like, okay, I'm gonna build something of my own. The dev shop's doing great. I want to pivot into something that's a little bit more personal and consumer focusing. So yeah, tell us how that pivot happened and how it went around.
The pivot never happened actually. That was always in the goal, in the pipeline, that we were going to build. Like eventually, when we have enough money, we're going to build something of our own. In fact, before Scalerize, we threw away three products that we just like built them, took them to like the MVP, tried getting some market feedback, and like they absolutely bombed. However, we did realize like one way or another, you learn something from those products. Either you're able to use their code bases and integrate them into your new products, or just like your team gets upskilled. So like there's no real downside to it. So Scalerize was just like another iteration, and um, when we finally sat down and started thinking about, okay, like we've tried three different like small products to like tried creating these like short timeline products, maybe we should sit down and think about, okay, this is like a low hanging fruit, or this is like deep tech research that we could do and solve for. And Scalerize came out of that. Scalerize came out of learnings from a lot of the team's interoperability backgrounds, not just myself, but like a lot of the team comes from Cosmos backgrounds. They worked on IBC. Some of them have worked on L2s. So like our background consists of like core infra and interoperability. So when we saw all of that, we like just learnings of those background, like we avid L2 users, and bridging experience sucks today, right? Moving from chain to chain sucks today. As a user, like if I was onboarding, like my siblings or my parents onto crypto, it's going to be a horrible experience. In fact, I did onboard my siblings onto crypto, trying to make them crypto native, and it was a horrible experience. They went on one chain, and then they were like very confused about, oh, I use this third-party bridge from this chain to this chain, and then I have to swap this asset out, and then I use another third-party bridge from this chain to another chain, and I don't know why I can't move between them. And then they actually hit the worst case as well by themselves, which was they used a bridge to move from one chain to another, and on the other chain they did not have liquidity for it. And the bridge at that time was only one way, so their funds were completely stuck for 3 months. So yeah, that experience really sucked, and that was one of the core motivators behind Scalerize. We wanted to build um, high performance application levels, like application stack for rollups, but at the same time solving for liquidity fragmentation, solving for asynchronous composability, solving for um, actually becoming a stage one and stage two rollup rather than just like larping out for years and years. And like all these words sound fancy, but they're trying to solve some real problems. For example, um, when like when you go to an L1 and say tell a smart like some protocol that has become famous has like a large number of users, you tell them, okay, come make an L2. You will get faster execution. You will have more bandwidth and execution requirements for your users. You can capture your own sequencing fees. Sounds like a win-win, right? However, on the L1, you get cross smart contract calls or smart contract composability for free. As soon as you become an L2, you lose all of that. Then you have to tap into these third-party bridges, which is a horrible experience. So we wanted to build an application-specific stack that enshrined asynchronous composability and interoperability within the protocol. And a side effect to this, at some level solve for liquidity fragmentation as well. And IBC is one of the major battle-tested protocols for this, and that's why we went with IBC. The whole idea was you can create these high-performance applications. Let's say, ideally, Uniswap, like Unichain should have been built with something like Scalerize, or like along similar lines. It should be made using an application-specific stack, where you can have like a custom mempool, where you can have custom integrations for interoperability, staking, slashing, native staking, or native yield. So you can have all of that customizability and give exceptional performance to users. Building another EVM chain on just like another EVM chain isn't really the ball game that you have to play here, because that you really, and as you gain users on the L2 as well, you run into the same state access and bandwidth requirements of the similar to the L1. So yeah, that was the core thesis behind building Scalerize.
Do you think like with this rise of new, like we saw like all these great apps, like the breakout apps of this cycle are like Ethena, and all of these guys are like first they have this successful product, now they're launching their own chain. What are like your like some of your observations on these new chains? Like Plasma is launching their own chain, and that's like one of the most hyped thing right now. Uh, Everyone is asking like, what's something that these new chains offer that, like, let's say they can't already do on Solana, let's say. What are
Right.
some of your observations on some of these newer chains, and are those applications like as you're saying like some they need this high performance stack?
Right. So what these application like these app well these application chains offer is at the very core level absolute customizability. Um, and one of the core offerings of Plasma is that um, some stablecoin transfers are completely free. You can pay gas or like you can pay your service like provide a fee in stablecoins as well, and that's usually been a problem when you even interoperate from L2 to L2. Let's say I want to go to a new ecosystem. I want to go from Arbitrum to um, Optimism, right? And I've never used Optimism before, or I've never used some other random chain before. Um, I bridge my stablecoins to them, and suddenly I realize I don't have gas, right? And sure, we talk about chain abstraction, we talk about using account abstraction underneath, and using these layers on top of layers to solve for this, but that's just like additional infra cost, and someone is paying for them, and that someone becomes the end user. Um, so these catered application specific blockchains uh, really solve for this customizability. At the same time, you can really fine tune for whatever guarantees that you want, right? Um, I would say Hyperliquid would be a great example for this. They really wanted um, high performance, and that's what they're trying to do with the Hyper EVM now. Although might not agree with some of the technical decisions that they made there. But yeah, like they launched a successful product. They found PMF. They found users. Um, I think it is one of the most successful on-chain liquidity platforms out there today. Um, and then at the same time, if you wanted to do the same thing on Solana, let's say like I said, someone subsidized like I want to do private like let's say build like private confidential, not just confidential, but private USDC to USDC transfers, because that's usually what I want when I want to transfer like $50 to my friend like Rachit or to Karthikeya, right? That's basically what I want. Now you can't do that in Solana because someone will have to subsidize your fees. Then there's additional layers and layers on top of it, like how you need smart accounts for it. Someone's delegating access to someone else to use their account, and slowly and slowly that becomes like very clunky and in like sometimes even infeasible. So that's what these application specific blockchains are offering. On the other hand, the downside to building all of these um, application specific blockchains is that they have massive infra costs, as in not just hosting them, but building them as well. Because they require massive expertise in finding the right engineers to figure out, like, if you're building an L1 consensus, your execution layer, yada, yada. And which is also why like a lot of these infra plays is where we see these massive valuations, these massive funding rounds, which shouldn't ideally happen, right? Infra plays should become cheaper and cheaper over time, and that's what we've seen happen at least in the traditional world. Whether we look at hardware, whether we look at software specific infra plays, um, they become cheaper and cheaper over time. Um, and then there's this like famous saying in hardware as well, like it's in software being second is expensive, in hardware being second is cheap. um so yeah, that thing usually plays out. So like, which is why I see application specific rollup stacks such as like sovereign, or commonware as a good example, or some of the example like Initia, Caldera. Um, these are great examples of infra providers, whether they're providing the physical infra for it, um, or they're providing the software for it to build these things um, for very cheap, and still giving the ease of use and customizability that like and developer wants. Because ideally, if someone was building Plasma, they shouldn't have to worry about, oh, consensus engine, oh, the execution layer. No, they should be only be focusing on, this is the business logic that I want, and I want the rest of my stack to reflect whatever the best tech for that specific business use case is, and nothing else.
No, that's awesome. I think KG, we can also add tech to our line items of things we cover. This is the first time someone covered anything technical, Rahul. Um, okay, so all that is awesome. I think I've heard the thesis a lot of times. It makes sense to me. One thing that I have always wondered about when a dev shop sort of introduces a product like this, who actually ends up running the dev shop? Like, if you're the CEO and founder of Scalerize full time, what
Mhm.
happens to the dev shop? Like, is it more split focus? How would one take care of that?
Yeah, so the idea from the very start always has to be that the dev shop eventually needs to become autonomous. You need to have people that believe in product ownership, that believe in either like generating leads, taking ownership of different parts of deliverables, whether it be or like soft deliverables, or whether it be code related deliverables, or whether it be even hard deliverables in terms of like providing infra or something else. So the idea is always to become autonomous, and thankfully, Aries has been at a stage for a while now where it has that autonomy where people take ownership of different things by themselves. Um, After that is just figuring out a good person to replace the technical side of you, and then which we did with our engineering lead, and then he's becoming the CTO. He has become the CTO now, and then you find like either a replacement CEO for yourself, or you find a replacement BD lead that that still replicate is able to replicate your entire customer to contract pipeline.
That makes sense. But is that something that VCs asked you a lot when you were pitching
Yeah,
Skillrise?
100%. So the first question that we get asked is, if you're the founder of Scalerize, who's the founder of Areas, or like who's leading Areas, who's taking care of Areas? If you are building Scalerize, are you splitting your time between Scalerize and Areas? Who has stake in Areas? Because like Areas initially incubated Scalerize before spinning it off. One of the major questions is, does anyone have stake in Areas? Because if they do, by proxy, they will have some stake in the product Scalerize as well, which generally VCs do not like. So yeah, these types of questions really make it difficult, because when there's like a lot of nuances involved, even if like it might be clear on your end that you're just building the product, you not really related to the dev shop anymore. You're just like, or you transition to an advisory role there. Um, it's very hard convincing VCs about that, because they usually like see that with a um, in a different light, and we've seen this play out as well, right? Equilibrium had Equilibrium, like a very successful, I would call them a venture studio now, based out of Europe. When they spun out, what was their prover service called again? I keep on forgetting the name. Gevulot. Yeah, when they spun out Gevulot, they had to, like, instead of like one of the founders leaving and becoming like the founder of Gevulot, they instead like had a like team member like take complete ownership of it, and like then separated it completely from the entity. And that was a good way to going about it, because now there's a very good answer to VCs. Gevulot is Gevulot, and Equilibrium is Equilibrium. There is no overlap between them, and never was. And they didn't even try incubating Gevulot initially. They just like raced for it, moved it out, and made it completely exclusive. That's usually a very good way to go about it, because then communication is much easier with VCs.
Cool. Is that your advice to anyone who's running a dev shop and pivoting out? Like, just be transparent with VCs and take care of the
Um,
structure you're running.
my my advice: do whatever works best for you. If you want to move quickly, um, completely spin out, or like you can pivot your entire dev shop as well. Move the business. That's the easiest way. Uh, Move the business. Just wrap up the dev shop in the same name. You can start a parent company, and the only thing the parent company does is this new product. Um, or another way is, and then you can raise money. Right, moving quickly requires raising a bunch of money so that you can iterate very quickly on it. If you want a lot of independence, if you want to dictate your own terms, or if you want to keep your other business running, you could also bootstrap all the way. For which I would say have enough reserves to last you a while, because building a product is a very different ballgame than running a dev shop, because there's no constant stream of revenue anymore. There's a lot of research problems that like your team gets stuck on. Timelines are never clear because you're working on novel stuff. So keep all of that factored in. Otherwise, you're going to have a very hard time.
For sure. I know we're closing in on the hour. Rahul, we usually ask this question at the end. It's like our marquee clip of the episode. Since
Uh-huh.
this episode was more around dev shops and how to start one, I think the appropriate clip here is, Rahul, what is your number one advice to anyone looking to start a dev shop today?
Start contributing to open source projects. Start getting your name out there. Become visible. Find people who you want to work with, and then just jam. It's that easy. It's not very hard to start dev shop. Scaling it is a different problem, but starting it is very, very easy. You just have to have the grit and determination. Like, contributing to open source projects is free. Go do it. Doesn't cost anything. It just costs you time.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This was awesome. I hope
It's a
someone
pleasure.
out there, motivation to find, run a dev shop, run their own product. And yeah, this has been truly inspirational. This is definitely
Yeah,
inspirational for me and KJ to learn about tech and play ball on the
yeah.
podcast.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, guys. And I know I usually when I get into one of my um, rants or spiels, like I go very deep into tech without realizing.
They're
um,
all for us. They're all
All
clips.
good.
They're all clips. Like KG's weekly task, like just clipping all of them. Um, thanks, Joel. Thanks for hopping on, man.
all
Appreciate you.
right. Peace out, guys. Thank you so